What is up? Tuesday night here. Still not feeling 100%. Actually, I didn't go into the plant today just because I didn't want, one, because I wasn't fully feeling up to it. I really wanted to get in there, but I also did not want to give this to anyone. And given the amount of rest that I ended up getting today, it was probably a really good idea. And the meetings I did take remotely, I'm not sure I was the best version of myself. I don't think I was the worst version of myself, but I was definitely a little bit more irritable than normal, which can probably be pretty unpleasant. That being said, as the day progressed, I did basically just try to stay hydrated, and also I did go down and walk on the treadmill to get some movement in because I was about to lose my mind, not moving around. Um, Overall, the walk went fairly well. Walked for about an hour just to get some movement. I haven't been eating much. Ate dinner basically both nights, about half of a dinner, and trying to get some sustenance in, but stomach bugs are no joke. So, all that being said, did get some time today to finish the book Clear Thinking by Shane Parrish. He runs Farnham Street. It's a blog. Everything I've seen on that blog, I really enjoyed, so I bought the book. I think the book is fantastic. Really boils down a process and elements of clearer thinking and effective decision making, and what that process should look like, and how to make sure that you're executing a good process. You might not always get good outcomes, as it discusses towards the end of the book, but as long as you're following a good process, right, that maximizes your ability to get good outcomes. So you don't want to be just lucky and sometimes successful. You want to increase that, right? If you were gambling in a casino or playing poker, you would be wanting to maximize your edge. Same thing in everyday life with the way that we go about decisions. I think one of the most interesting things that it brought up, I had talked about before, was the defaults that we experience, being the emotional default, the ego default, the social default, and the inertia default, and how oftentimes we just shortcut and we don't even understand we're making a decision. We just rely on the defaults. And this isn't necessarily consciously, like intentionally, but it's just the way that we are wired as human beings. And so the rest of the book really discusses kind of overcoming those defaults and just frameworks and thought processes and exercises to put in place, tactics to put in place that help you enable clear thinking. Now, within that book, it brought up a really interesting point that flagged something I wanted to discuss, and it's called self-serving bias. And what self-serving bias is that, to put it simply, when we get a positive outcome, we like to take responsibility for that. If there's a negative outcome, we like to blame that on external factors or on others. And this is something, if you want to improve, if you want personal development and self-improvement, I would strongly urge you to identify this bias and overcome it. And truthfully, leaning towards this thing of owning everything that happens in your world that you play any sort of factor in. I would stress to overexert or bias yourself the other way, and determine and then always self-reflect on situations of what you could do differently and what you could do better. If you just blame your situation and the world that you're in on everything around you, then you have no control over it. And that seems awfully dismal and awfully overwhelming to me. Flipping that script, and for somebody that maybe hasn't taken a lot of control or taken a lot of ownership for the things in their life, it may sound daunting to take ownership for as much as you possibly can. But trust me, once you have control over that, you get to then determine and make decisions surrounding your life and your future. And you get to craft a present and create a life by design. Instead of living by the whims of the world and the whims of those around you and somebody else's scorecard, you get to create your own. And at that point, you can then start to gain some wins that you truthfully earn and start to gain momentum into becoming the better version of you. And so ultimately, that's the biggest takeaway. It's a fundamental aspect of self-improvement and personal development, in my opinion. One of the biggest things for me is when I stopped blaming external factors, and I can't say that I'm perfect, I can't say that it never happens anymore, but it very rarely happens. I try to identify what ownership I have in it and what control I exhibited. So the only other thing I would touch on is that kind of the Stoic principle. The only thing we have to control is ourselves, right? And what's inside of us. And past that, however, we can influence the world around us. And that's something that I think I'll lean into as we move throughout this series and throughout my vlogs, because it's very important to me. One, your self-control and the control that you exhibit internally. And then two, the influence upon the world around you and others in your world, right? Because I don't think you achieve great things by yourself. And so creating a network and creating people and influencing those people, I think, is incredibly important. And hopefully you understand this in a positive fashion towards positive goals, right? In particular for me right now, obviously heavily focused professionally in a manufacturing environment, growing a business over the next couple of years, and designing and developing the right processes for that growth, so that way we can create and be a premier employer in the market that we live in, and hopefully improve the lives of not only our members, but the community around us. So all of that to say, I need to be sure that I control what I can control and that I influence everything that's within my responsibility to try to get the outcomes that we need in order to be successful and ultimately make the lives of our members better, right? I'll expand on that a little bit more and maybe in using different examples, but understanding fundamentally that the only thing you can control is yourself is very important. And that wasting energy on external factors at times can be utterly wasteful. And blaming external factors for your circumstances removes your control and your ability to improve your life. So I advise against doing that. I appreciate you guys very much. Hope you enjoyed the video. Have a safe night.